Welcome to the Creation Innovation Podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth King. Together, we'll have conversations with incredible human beings who have taken their creative outlet and turned it into something innovative. From people leaving the corporate world to be 8-figure entrepreneurs to people who have created books, created a family, or just creating to have fun in the world. We are all in a journey to create something amazing in our lives, and I hope that you find some inspiration of your own here. This is the Creation Innovation Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to Creation Innovation. Thanks for joining us today. We have Leah Drew. Welcome, Leah.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Elizabeth. It's a pleasure.
Can you intro yourself to our audience about what it is that you do in the world?
Absolutely. So I'm a mind body healing guide and a women's empowerment coach. I work with men and women, but in group settings, I mostly bring women together to help them rise in their power, to help them recognize their worth, to help them really step into their confidence and their strength, and really step into the world around them in a way that they feel really good and in a way that they walk through the world feeling like their soul is on fire and their heart is on fire, and where they get to fall more in love with themselves every single day, with the life that they're living every single day. And because of all of my experiences in the world, I can target so many different areas of work when I'm diving deep with someone, from body work and functional movement to chronic pain, and looking at like holistic biohacking modalities to support the reduction of chronic health symptoms and chronic disease symptoms and chronic pain symptoms. And then also really diving deep into the subconscious, into the unconscious, looking at past trauma, looking at mindset, looking at limiting beliefs, looking at stories, looking at ancestral trauma and experiences, looking at all of these things that ultimately hold us back from being our most authentic selves, being able to step into that power, step into that confidence, and walk through the world, like I said, in a way that you feel like your soul's on fire.
Well, that sounds like a lot to take on, and I'm so interested to know more. How do you go about doing that? Where do I start by that? Because you just rattled off a million things that you do so well. So let's start with the subconscious, unconscious part. What type
Totally.
of modality do you do? How does that work? What if somebody's coming to you that says, I'm either aware of it or maybe I'm not aware of it, of some block that's preventing me to do X or Y or whatever. How do you go about helping somebody through that?
Yeah, there's a lot of different tools and modalities that I use, things that I've learned over the years. And what I find is the most powerful tool out of all of them is really just listening, taking like a back seat and letting my client lead and listening to what it is that they have to say, listening for key things that continue to come up in conversations, for patterns, and being able to reflect those back to my client and to anybody that's in my world, even if they're friends or people that just follow me on social media. Because I think that the having the ability to receive a reflection based off of not what someone thinks or assumes, but what they hear. It gives you a really beautiful opportunity to step outside of the path that maybe you've been walking, so that you can look back at the path with a different perspective and gain some clarity around whether or not you are in alignment with with the path that feels best for you, whether you are opting into experiences that are the way that you want to act, behave, react, and respond. And I find that that gives someone a really beautiful opportunity to start to create change in these areas where they might be stuck, where they might be challenged, where they might be overcome with patterns that maybe aren't serving them and getting to the place where they want to be, or supporting them in their business, or supporting them in their relationships, or supporting them within their own mind and body themselves.
And what does that look like for somebody who's coming to you? Like, what does your ideal client look like walking in the door or through Zoom or whatever it is at this point?
It's funny that you ask that, because I meet people in so many different places. I find that my one of my unique gifts is being able to shine a light on as many possible doors of healing as I can for someone so that they get to then choose and decide what path do they want to walk? What area do they want to dive deeper into? And so some people come to me with more like chronic health symptoms and chronic pain symptoms that want to incorporate a mix of trauma work, somatic work, movement therapies, subconscious reprogramming.
So for people who are listening that are like, what is trauma work? What does that look like? Right? Like, is that therapy or what is somatic? A lot of people don't even know what those terms are. I think the trauma word is thrown around a
Totally.
lot lately. Um, but can you go into that a little deeper to help people understand so they can really hone in on is that is that me, right? Is that something that I could potentially get help for?
Absolutely. Well, I'm not a therapist, so I definitely want to put that
Mhm.
on the table first. And what I do with my clients is help them look at situations from the past that have caused them a lot of stress, maybe that they're looking at or replaying in their minds in a particular way, the stories that they're telling themselves, and helping them see the connections that it has to their physical bodies and to the world around them. And so, somatic work is really a way that helps someone get into the body and unravel the experience that the body holds on to after we go through some sort of challenge or stressor or traumatic experience in our world, because the body keeps a score in everything. You can push something out of your mind, out of your conscious mind, as far as you want, but the thing is your body's always going to remember what happened to you. And so part of what led me into this field of work was finding out at the age of 16 that I had a pancreatic tumor the size of an orange, which is really rare, super uncommon, and I'm really lucky that I survived it. And over the years, I couldn't understand why all of these chronic health symptoms continued to be present in my world, in my body. I had chronic pain. I had autoimmune disease symptoms. I had all of these things, inflammatory things happening in my body that nobody could seem to figure out and like put the puzzle pieces together around. And as I dove deeper into understanding symptoms and symptomology and the physical body, I started under coming to recognize this link between emotions, trauma, and the physical expression of symptoms.
So did you think at 16 you had already had trauma and things that led you to having that?
For sure. And as I went deeper into this journey, I started to understand more around not just my life up to age 16 and how all of the emotional stress, all of the trauma that I experienced, all the challenges that I endured as a little girl, how all that stress led to creating an environment where that tumor was able to grow. That started to become clear as I unraveled a lot of these experiences and came to understand the study of epigenetics, which is the study of your environment and how it influences your genetic expression and how it influences your symptomology and the expression of what it is that you're experiencing in your body. And so through age 16, yeah, I had a lot of challenge, a lot of trauma.
Mhm.
And I also got to look at my ancestors and what
Mhm.
my parents, what my grandparents, what they went through and what they endured that I was still re experiencing in my body because my body remembers, my genes remember. All of that information is stored in your genes, which is why, in my opinion, it's so important to dive deeper into your healing work through life. Because if you do plan to have children, if you already have children, you get to be the pattern breaker that allows yourself to heal more deeply so that the people that come after you don't need to experience some of the similar challenges that you move through in your life. And then to take it one step further, because we're talking about like the physical body and your own personal experience, we know, and science shows us, energetically speaking, that what is happening within us is going to be mirrored and reflected in the world around us, as within, so without, as above, so below, right? And so, what happens in your physical body is going to attract particular things in the world around you, whether that is happening in the form of chronic symptoms, chronic inflammation, whether your organs aren't working super optimally for you, if you're having a difficult time with your relating with yourself, relating with others, all of the things that are happening in your mind and in your body are going to be reflected in the world around you energetically.
And most people who follow me and have listened know that I'm a big fan of all things epigenetics and completely, believe, subscribe to all the things. And I think that part of that, it makes it easier to do the healing, right? Because you already understand and you kind of, for lack of a better term, buy into that science. Where some people are like, yeah, no, I just really believe that like what's passed down is the blonde hair, the blue eyes, and you know all the DNA, so to speak, stuff. Um, so for somebody who's not quite in on that train of thought, what would you advise to them in trying to understand that maybe some of the things going on in their world are because of that?
Yeah, I would say awareness is key, right? Like having the awareness, and as you start to take one step deeper and one step deeper and one step deeper into your healing journey, you start to see these patterns and they start to show themselves to you as you start to gain awareness. And almost, I don't know any client that of mine that hasn't started to recognize these patterns between ourselves and our parents, because we learn from our parents, right? And so the things that
Mhm.
your mother and your father know and the things that your mother and your father learned growing up, you're going to learn from them as well. And so it can be easy to first identify these through like habits and behaviors, and starting to see like you might have had that moment like, oh wow, like I am my mother, or like I'm totally acting like my father right now, right?
Mhm.
And I think that can be really helpful to start to see the connections that exist between our parents and ourselves. And then when you start to understand like and actually look at the science of epigenetics, we do see that your genes are passed down, right, from your mother and your father to you. And through the things that you can change in your environment, whether that be your self talk, whether that be the products you're using on your body and your skin, whether that be the food that you're putting in your body, the people that you're surrounding yourselves with, science shows us that that actually changes which genes are being expressed and which genes are actually turning on and off like a light switch. And so when you start to recognize that you have the ability to flip these genes on or off in expression, and you realize that both of these sets of genes came from your parents, you get to see that some of these patterns were passed down to you, and then you can choose to turn them off, or to turn them on.
And just to extend on this, if you're interested in learning more about it, the Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton is a great place to start, and really explains a lot of the science behind it that then leads into how it connects to the emotional. So Leah's really giving a great synopsis of his book and what that all kind of ties back to, which is amazing. So, for your own situation at 16, what do you then attribute your healing and your being here today from that experience with?
Well, I definitely wasn't catapulted into the deeper levels of my healing journey right away. I, as Western medicine often teaches us and tells us, thought that I was going to have surgery and all the things were going to be better. And it wasn't the case. Actually, my mental and emotional health got really not good. I don't like to use the word bad, but it was not super optimal. And I started really suffering with my mental and emotional health. My gut health was suffering because I just had major abdominal surgery. I was having a lot of chronic physical pain because to get to your pancreas, you have to push all of the organs in your body aside to get there. And so I had all of this fascial imbalances in my abdomen that was preventing me from being able to stabilize my core and optimally contract my core muscles, and then that led to the herniations in my lumbar spine. But it wasn't like until later on over the years when I got to this point where I came really close to committing suicide, and I had to hit the pause button and take a step back and be like, "Oh my god, like I'm not in a good place. I'm not happy with my life. I'm not happy with who I am. And I have a choice right now. And I have a choice to create a change." And at that moment in time, the change that I was observing, I was sitting on a kitchen floor in a hotel room, high rise building, and I had just finished a bodybuilding show. And I opted into this thinking that this was going to be the way to get my body back, to get my health back, to be really happy and confident in myself and my body, and really be this bridge to my mind body connection that I was learning about in my undergrad degree. And it did the opposite. It completely disconnected my mind from my body. It really led me down a self sabotaging path. And I started trying to pull all these external things into my world to fill these voids and these wounds and this trauma that was unhealed to try to cover it up and support it. And external things were not the thing to do that. It wasn't healing the roots, right? You can put a band-aid over the wound, but if you don't actually heal the roots of the wound, then nothing's going to change. And so I'm sitting on this kitchen floor and I'm staring at this bag of chocolate that I just was binge eating, and I like couldn't stop between the mental emotional dopamine hits from putting a piece of chocolate in my mouth to like just this hatred for my body at the time. And I like paused and I grabbed the bag, put my shoes on. I'm like sobbing. And I walk outside and I handed this bag of chocolate and junk food to a homeless man. And I should have seen like the look on his face. It's so incredible sometimes how like one man's trash is another
Yeah,
man's
treasure.
treasure, right? And
Jackpot.
yeah, literally. And he's like, "Oh my God, like for me?" And I was like, "Yep, not for me." And that was really like the catalyst for me to start diving deeper into my healing journey. So it took me about 5 years after that major abdominal surgery until I started looking at my mindset and looking at healing the physical pain through functional movement and like holistic modalities, which then led me deeper down the path into trauma healing and epigenetics and emotional regulation and somatic healing.
Amazing. Because I think so many people are dealing with, whether it's a physical trauma or an emotional or whatever, not understanding the significance that it has, not only now, but down the road, and don't even know where to start to heal that, right? Some people may go to a therapist, and like me, I'm not a big therapy's never been something that I walk away and I'm like, oh, that was so helpful. Like, so glad I did that. I've always been somebody that leans more towards spiritual aspects, or different modalities than the mainstream, so to speak, in order to heal things. And I think that's where a lot of people just don't know where to take that first step in order to say, like, what does that even look like? Right. So,
Yeah.
how do I find somebody like Leah or whoever it may be that can help me take that first step to even recognizing like the pain that I feel inside in my heart and my gut, physical and emotional, can actually be healed? Because I think a lot of people, the first step is really having the knowing that it's possible, right? And or especially if you come from mental health issues in your family line, you think, if you do believe on the epigenetics, oh, maybe this is just my path, and I'm not able to switch on and off that gene, right? And I think with the right guidance and person to help you through those different modalities or whatever it is, and it, like you said, it took you 5 years, it's not an overnight thing, and it can be, and most of the time is, many different things to get to it. And I don't know if in your experience, Leah, but for most people it's like you think you've had this like final huge like aha healing moment, you're like, I'm cured of my issues for whatever, and then 2 years down the road you're like, oh my god, it's like rearing its ugly head again. And it's not that it goes away forever, but when it does come back, it's not as intense and it's not for as long. And you know how to regulate that back again. Do you find the same similar situation for yourself?
Totally. And that's where I think having all of the tools in your toolbox is so important because like life is always going to get challenging. There's always going to be ups, there's always going to be downs. And you're always going to be human having a human experience that is full of emotions and feelings and everything, right?
Mhm.
And so when you can feel so confident in the toolbox that you're carrying down this path with you and know that when there's a really low down or a really deep down, you can pull that tool out of your toolbox because you can say, okay, I'm listening to my body. I know what my body's asking for. I know what my mind and my body need. I know what tool to pull from that's going to support me right now as I move through this. And sometimes it's not about like fixing the problem, it's just about like continuing to find that grounded space and that ability to process while you're moving through all of the things happening in your world, right? I see it as like being able to just like step into the eye of the storm. The storm's not going anywhere. The storm is still surrounding you, but like you have this moment of like, okay, like I got me. And that's what I really seek to instill into the people in my world, my clients, my friends, like my followers, is helping them develop that awareness to look at the tools that they have in their toolbox, to recognize where they're not capable and confident in supporting themselves, and then looking at, okay, what can I step into to better support myself along this path? And you said something earlier around like the therapy, right? Therapy is one tool. And there's so many different forms of therapy, as there are so many different forms of body work, as there's so many different forms of movement, as there's so many different forms of nutritionists and holistic healers.
Mhm.
And there is benefit to all the things. And I always say to my people, my clients, like if you're waiting for that one thing to change your present experience, you're going to be waiting a hell of a long time because it's
Mhm.
not the one thing that's going to change your experience. It's the cultivation of all the things, it's the cultivation of all the tools and learning as you go along to like slowly bring a little of this in and slowly bring a little bit of that in and start to like paint your canvas with all these colors per se. I think that it gives you a better ability to navigate those ups and downs of life. And you need to go through the experiences of, for example, general talk therapy or general CBT therapy to look at it and say, what about this do I like? What about this do I want to keep? Do I want to adopt? And where do I need something different? Where do I need
Mhm.
more? And
Mhm.
so, I always also try to remind my clients it's like, it wasn't a waste of your time. You learned so much through trying this modality, through going and seeking out this therapist, through talking, because verbalizing is just one way of processing. And
Mhm.
where I think the beauty comes in, which is what you were really getting at, is being able to bring the spiritual, the energetic, the somatic, the embodiment techniques into that verbal talk therapy or the verbal processing, whether you're working with a coach, a mentor, or a therapist, to be able to bring all of them together and use all of the tools to support yourself in moving forwards.
Right. I always just say stay open and curious to all the things and all the people that come into your life that could potentially help. Worst case, you're like, okay, learned something from there, move on, right? But best case, you walk away and like, oh my gosh, that changed my life for this moment, right? And I say for this moment because it will always be something else that comes along. And all those moments added up with the toolbox, as you say, really makes a difference over time and not only helps you but all the people around you, right? If you show up as a better you, everything that goes around you, your business, your relationships, et cetera, like you said at the beginning of this call, make a difference. You are as good as the people that are surround you, and we want to lift those people up with what we know and how we show up versus the alternative.
Mhm.
So how can people find you, work with you, learn from you?
Totally. You can find me at leahdrew.com. And tend to hang out on Instagram a whole lot. I do a bunch of lives and a bunch of free things on social media. I love to connect with community. So come hang out with me. It's Mind Body with Leah on Instagram. And say hello. Let me know where you heard me, where you found me. And yeah, I always love to hear about what's coming up in the worlds of my followers so that I can do my best to bring my lessons into the space in a way that supports them. So, would love to hear from you. Would love for you to reach out. And I'll also send you as well. I have for those that are listening that are like, oh, okay, like I feel like there's these things that I want to start to change or these tools that I want to start to bring into my life, but I don't know where to start and I don't know how to do that. I have a free masterclass that I will share with you for your listeners. It's called the Awareness Seeker Workshop, and it helps with really like hitting that pause button and taking a step back so that you can observe what's happening in your world, really get clear on what's not feeling good, where are things out of balance, where do you desire to bring more harmony into your life, stronger tools, and a stronger support system, and then what steps to take moving forwards to really start to feel the way that you want to feel and create the shifts and changes in your world in a very digestible way, so that you can start taking those steps forwards along your journey in a more aligned path.
Amazing. That sounds fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Have a good rest of your day, and thanks for being on today. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Creation Innovation Podcast. Make sure to follow us on Spotify for free episodes and subscribe to the Creation Innovation Podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you choose to get your podcast. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening for a chance to receive a special gift. Yes, we actually do send out gifts. It's my favorite thing to do. So visit us at elizabethking.com/creation innovation for more information on how to enter. Every review counts, and we are so grateful. You can follow me at the official Elizabeth King on Instagram or TikTok. Until next time.